Are you ready to scale your business in a way that's aligned with your soul and profitable? I'm Casey Rossi, a business and leadership coach. I've been a full-time entrepreneur for 30 years and love business. I help conscious leaders increase their impact and optimize their lives. Join me each week for tips and deep conversations on cultivating confidence, increasing your visibility, elevating your vibration, and leading with purpose without burning out. Let's go. Hello, beautiful. I'm excited to talk about today's topic with you because it's something that is widespread and most likely sucking your energy. Before we dive in, here are a couple of things that I know about you if you're listening to this show. 1, you're a high achiever. That is something that is ingrained in your fabric. 2, you are a forever learner. Education and self-actualization jazz you up. And 3, you're looking for ways to optimize both your life and business. Now, things may be humming along, and you have this internal knowing that there is always room for improvement, tweaks, and ways to go further, faster. In that, I'm always looking for topics that are going to tick the boxes and create room for pause so that you can reflect and take inspired action. Today is about energy, your energy. The textbook definition of energy is the strength and vitality required for sustained physical or mental activity. Without energy, it is difficult to power your day without pushing and forcing. When you have energy, things flow easier and you're way more productive. To me, there is nothing more motivating than finding solutions to increase energy, which in turn decreases exhaustion and prevents burnout. I'm particularly excited about this topic because I've had burnout and adrenal fatigue, and it took me a long time of dedicated effort to get back on track, and I don't want that for you. Many times the habits we do in our day are unconscious. It's just how we always have shown up, and so we continue to do what we know. Our way of generally doing something comes naturally, and when there is a groove, it's easier for our minds to always turn the car in that direction, if that makes sense. So for example, in many of my coaching sessions on Zoom, I had a habit of leaning forward. Perhaps because that's a characteristic of a visual learner, which I am, or because I literally was leaning in to hear my clients' stories, or somehow unconsciously felt it allowed them to trust my engagement. Probably a combination. It wasn't until a mentor pointed it out to me that I realized I was over my 50% line. Now, what does that mean? Physically, especially if we were together in person, it would have been apparent that I was not 100% in my space, but I was a percentage into theirs. From the surface, you may be thinking, what's wrong with that? And we're going to get into that. But recently, a client came to me and said, I am exhausted. I just had an hour-and-a-half meeting with a client and it felt like pulling teeth. Now I'm so drained. I immediately thought of this 50% line. Now, in all honesty, when I first heard this, I wasn't all on board. The recovering perfectionist in me was like, I strive to show up 110%, and that's how I achieve. Maybe you have the same mental tape. I actually even chuckled when I heard myself. Now, this isn't about doing mediocre work or not giving your best self. It's about being aware of and managing your mental and physical energy, especially if you're an empath. Here's a 2-step process that I call tune in and shift. It has the potential to radically increase your presence and conserve energy when connecting with others. Step 1, take note of your natural tendency and shape, and be mindful when you cross over the 50% line mentally or physically. Step 2, tune in and shift your posture and intention. Become aligned, open your heart, breathe into your solar plexus, and ground in your touch points, whether that is your seat or feet or both. And then resume the conversation with active listening. This simple shift alone brought a pretty remarkable result of having more energy at the end of the day, and the more I practice it, the more blown away at the consistent results I get. You won't know it works until you try it for yourself. You can always go back to the episode transcript and copy and paste the practice and then test it out. In the vein of optimizing, here is another pro tip to supercharge this. Add the loop of awareness, which is a practice developed by Katie Hendricks. It is a process of placing your attention on an experience inside yourself and then switching focus to an experience outside yourself. So in my example, my interaction with a client, how am I showing up in that partnership? My breath, posture, tone, shape, attention, and then loop to the client. What is it like for them to be in this world or on this call with me, sharing their personal stories? And then an additional perspective is to have a third loop where you oscillate between you, them, and then the universe, which can be embodied in something living like a tree or a plant, or glance out your window at the sky or birds flying overhead. This looping of awareness is an extremely powerful way to stay present with who you're talking to, present with yourself, staying connected to both, and having a touch point to something greater than yourself, which is source, creation, and nature. I'll attach a PDF in the show notes so you can see outlined instructions on this loop of awareness, and then try it on for yourself. If you do, dash me a note at casey@caseyrossi.com to let me know what you noticed. Next, when we think of fulfilling our 50%, the topic of balancing the scales comes to mind. True partnership and dynamic results typically come from collaboration. Now, take a moment here. Think of carrying something heavy. What's the burden like when you carry it alone? Now imagine you have one handle of that bag and your partner is holding the other. What does it feel like to share the load? Now imagine your partner is only carrying a portion of their side, adding more weight for you. What's that like? Unknowingly, we have this little dance in every interaction. Sometimes we're carrying the brunt of the load, other times we're coasting, and ideally, there is a wonderful balance of give and take. Where we see this get sticky is when our tendency is to overgive and overstep our 50%, and then it becomes a habit, which can result in over-delivering and ultimately resentment for overworking. So this is where adopting this mindset is really going to reward you and your nervous system. Even in situations where there is a client paying for a service, there is still an agreement or expectation that the person arrives with a challenge or some sort of clarity or needs around it. In the example of my client being drained after a meeting, she was doing all the heavy lifting, as was apparent in her, quote, felt like I was pulling teeth, quote, comment. Unless a total hands-off approach was agreed upon, in most relationships, parties both coming to play win. If you're falling prey to overgiving, it may be time to tweak your communication when it comes to setting expectations with your clients or team members. Being clear about what works best in your experience can go a long way, as well as direct guidance as to what you need from them in order to do your best work and get swoon-worthy results. Asking yourself, what is my responsibility? And then what is their responsibility? Help set the boundaries right at the start. This can help a service-based professional avoid scope creep and tardy accounts receivable. It can also help a coach determine if they are trying to fix or solve, and it can help a leader model the way for their team. So, my friend, how will you implement your 50% today? Will you try out the tune in and shift practice or the looping of awareness? Do you have a conversation popping up in your mind that would be helpful to initiate? I invite you to jot down what's coming up for you and what you are committed to taking action on to anchor in any new learnings. I am so looking forward to hearing how it goes for you. shoot me an email at casey@caseyrossi.com. Until next week, breathe joy. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, please head on over to lovethepodcast.com/brilliance to rate and review the show. Santia from Denmark says 5 stars. Fascinating listen. Highly recommend to anyone looking to build a soul-aligned business. Casey is an amazing host, making sure the audience always leaves with way more than they started with. Such a great listen. Thank you so much, Santia. It means so much to me when people like you take the time to share their thoughts. To leave your own review, head on over to lovethepodcast.com/brilliance. Thank you.